Earlier this year, I took a look at the old but still pretty gold Dynasty Warriors 5 Empires. While there are some aspects that haven't aged well, such as the camera control, it is still an awesome experience from beginning to end. Starting as a faction from the bottom to eventually conquer all of China is a boatload of fun. Despite how good that game is, it is actually not my favorite Empires titles in the Warriors series. That will have to belong to the very underrated and underappreciated game known as Samurai Warriors 2 Empires. Instead of the stage being that of the Three Kingdoms period in China, we fast forward in time to the Sengoku Jidai of Japan. During this time, great daimyos such as Nobunaga Oda, Shingen Takeda, and Ieyasu Tokugawa made their claim in history and are well remembered today. I can go on and on about the various clans and the fondness of this period, but let's just dive right into why Samurai Warriors 2 Empires is my favorite Empires game of all time. To start up a campaign, you select Empire mode and can select from a handful of scenarios at first. More of them are unlocked as you complete scenarios. Unique to this game is how you can start your campaign at certain sections of the map, then expand to all of Japan once defeating other warlords. For this review, we will do just that, as I will start with the unification of Chubu scenario. I usually would go with the Oda, Takeda, or Tokugawa with this scenario, but let's mix it up with the Uesugi clan headed by the legendary Kenshin Uesugi.
May the gods show you mercy.
If you've watched my review of Dynasty Warriors 5 Empires, you'll notice many of the similar beats here. For each turn, you can propose 2 policies at once via your generals or enact one policy of your choosing. Similar to before, lieutenants are not able to propose any policies. Your generals can also introduce new policies that you may not know about, such as various tactics or even special units to aid you in battle. As you expand and rank up, you'll eventually be able to enact more policies per turn. It's a great system that thankfully was brought back in Samurai Warriors 4 Empires. If you guys want me to take a look at that game eventually, let me know in the comments below. As expected, the only way to grow is to expand your domain via invading other territories. You select your officers to go join you in battle and go from there. You'll need to be mindful of your gold, however, as invasions can be very expensive early on. For pre-battle, most is retained with the ability to choose formations being added. Choosing a formation is honestly key to winning most battles. A formation can fall into one of 3 categories: attack, defend, and speed. This works in a triangle strategies where attacks beat speed, speed beats defend, and defend beats attack. You'll also need to be mindful of the level of the formation chosen, as a level 3 attack will beat a level 1 defense, regardless of the defense being its natural counter. For the most part, it is very easy to understand and fun to play with, although it can make some battles a bit one-sided, especially if someone succeeds with an attack formation. Officers can easily be slain when going up against formations of attack. Formations can also be swapped during battle. This is done by gaining enough formation points to change to one that is currently in the faction stock. Be warned though, as you can only carry up to 5 formations at once, so it might be wise to get rid of some level 1 formations to make room for level 2 or 3 formations. Another way you can negate an enemy's formation effect is to take out enough officers, which will end up preventing the enemy from using any formations at all. This can offer an interesting strategy of headhunting officers and focusing your officers on defense first before conquering any bases. This amount of tactical flexibility here is what really makes Samurai Warriors 2 Empires stand out in my opinion. Alright, so I think I've talked enough about formations already, so let's move on to the battle proper. As the Uesugi only start with 1 unique officer, I will be playing as Kenshin before we get into some more unique officers to experiment with. While the basic principles of normal attacks and charge attacks remain, more abilities have been given to the player. For one, instead of just being able to block, players can now roll out of the way with a simple tap of a button. It's a great way to get behind enemies and set them up for a devastating counterattack. Heck, even the AI knows how valuable this is and often rolls away when it is in retreat mode. Another is the special ability button. This button prepares your character in a special stance, and pressing either the normal attack or charge attack button will perform a unique attack. For Kenshin here, he can either increase his strength temporarily or shoot out several slow moving projectiles that can stun the enemy on contact. The amount of times I use the special ability really depends on the character I'm using, but I do appreciate how unique most of these attacks are. While every character in Dynasty Warriors shares the same moveset, the same cannot be said with Samurai Warriors. Depending on your character, he or she can fall into one of 3 categories: normal, special, and charge. For Kenshin, he falls into the normal category, meaning he can have an incredibly long chain of normal attacks, as well as charge attacks that extend well beyond the 6th level. An example of a charge attack character is one of my favorites in Kotaro Fuma. A charge character will only reach level 4 charge, but have their charge attacks equal 3 attacks. So for example, A combo for Kotaro Fuma could be 3 normal attacks followed by 3 charge attacks, while somebody like Kenshin could be able to do 7 normal attacks followed by 1 charge attack. While the combat is still ultimately a button masher, this gives each character a bit more uniqueness in terms of playstyle. Honestly wish something like this would blend in with Dynasty Warriors, but it doesn't look like it'll happen anytime soon. Another unique feature found in battles is the ability for officers to defect. When an opportunity presents itself, you'll be given a mission that you'll need to accomplish in order to have an enemy officer join you mid-battle, or to prevent a defection on your end. Some of these involve achieving a certain combo amount, defeating a certain amount of officers, or even storming the main camp within the allotted amount of time. Completing these can be very beneficial, especially when you gain a high-level officer that has a ton of troops with them. One of the biggest issues with Dynasty Warriors 5 Empires was the lack of proper camera control. Thankfully, that has been addressed with the ability to now rotate the camera via the right analog stick. This might sound like a simple change, but it ultimately helps the game to feel far more modern than its Dynasty Warriors counterpart. Once you complete each battle with a victory, you are told the kind of victory it is, being either a total victory, regular victory, or a narrow victory. This mainly just gauges how much your forces dominated throughout the battle, or if you were on the ropes for a majority of it. Afterwards, you are brought to the summary screen where your points are tallied up and are given a rank for your efforts. This is also where you can add abilities to your weapons and see your officers level up. Afterwards, you can recruit or release officers you have captured, similar to before. Eventually, as you expand, you are also given the ability to place your officers prior to battle. This is honestly a pretty invaluable feature, as you can easily place officers in key locations such as your main camp for defense or to conquer bases from one side. I wish you didn't have to unlock this during your campaign, as by that time you'll only have a handful of battles to go before ultimate unification. And speaking of unification, you are given that option once you conquer all territories in your region. You can end the campaign right then and there, or go for the total unification route. Seeing as I want to see this through, we are going for the rest of Japan. Since we've gained a ton of officers from defeating the Oda and Tokugawa clans, we can conquer the land with a decent amount of Musu officers. Unfortunately, this is where some of the cracks of the game begin to show. For one, there is a huge lack of unique officers to play as. There are only 28 officers to play as, with many of them being stuck in the eastern part of Japan, as well as many not showing up outside of the later scenarios. Compare this to Dynasty Warriors 5 Empires, which has 48 officers. Since I started in 1561, many officers such as Jincho Tachibana, Musashi Miyamoto, Kanesugo Naoe, Yukimura Sanada, and my favorite character Ina are not present from the start and did not show up in my campaign at all. And even if they did, they would be so underleveled that it wouldn't be worth using them at all. And yes, you can create officers using the edit mode, but there aren't a ton of options to play with, and I usually don't even bother with it. Personally, I wish they made this game after the Extreme Legends expansion to Samurai Warriors 2, which added 4 more playable officers not featured in this game, including Toshie Maeda, Gracia, Yoshimoto Imagawa, and the always badass Moroshika Shosokabe. Moroshika alone would have made a Shosokabe playthrough much more interesting. The difficulty also has a habit of ramping up a little too quickly. Compared to Dynasty Warriors 5 Empires, it is way easier for you to be taken out by another officer, or even by some special units. As mentioned before with formations, some of the formation advantages are pretty OP, especially the attack ones. This makes it so officers die in just a handful of swipes. It also doesn't help that the enemy officers level up automatically over time, regardless as if they have been in battle or not. My personal recommendation would be to stay close to officers and to order them to accompany you once you assault the main camp. This will make it much easier to assault the main camp, as well as provide some combo Musu opportunities. Eventually, we are finally able to take over the last piece of territory and become the new shogun of Japan, establishing a new Bakufu. My top 4 officers were Kotaro Fuma, Mitsuhide Akechi, Keiji Maeda, and some random generic dude. While the Sengoku Jidai is finally coming to an end, now is the time to finally rebuild Japan into the golden age it truly deserves. Similar to prior and future Empires games, you can view the history of your conquest starting with your humble beginning and highlighting the key events throughout your campaign. Along with conquering certain territory, this includes recruiting certain key officers, hosting tournaments, and a few other notable events. Unfortunately, the animated endings of before are gone and replaced with just still images summarizing your rule going forward and the fate of your 4 great general officers. Still, it's nice to see what ultimately results in your rule, accompanied with some absolutely gorgeous music. And speaking of the music, we can talk about the presentation real quick. Compared to Dynasty Warriors, the music takes on a more electronica vibe mixed in with Japanese instrumentation. It's a bit jarring going from the more metal and rock inspired soundtrack of Dynasty Warriors, but it honestly works here. The music here is pretty good, although the later Samurai Warrior games, especially 4, use the mix of genres better in my opinion. Graphically, there isn't too much to say here. It's an overall slight improvement compared to Dynasty Warriors 5 Empires. Still, I do like the animations that play out when you win a battle.
I advance only as the wind takes me.
Overall, Samurai Warriors 2 Empires is a great game that still holds up very well today. The strategic play is excellent, battles are much more enjoyable compared to Dynasty Warriors 5 Empires, and the game is just plain old fun. I didn't mention it prior, but it's even more enjoyable when teaming up with a friend via co-op. My only gripes are with the lack of unique officers, especially in the West, and the increased difficulty by the end of the campaign. Still, it's an underappreciated classic here in the Western world that I hope gets more love eventually. Maybe this review has done the game justice, but who knows. Either way, thank you guys for watching as always, and this is Powerhouse, signing off.